Good afternoon. Welcome, and thank you for being with us this afternoon. I know we all continue to be horrified by the war in Ukraine and the atrocities being committed against civilians. There are now close to 4 million Ukrainian refugees who have fled, as well as 6.5 million internally displaced people. This means that a full quarter of Ukrainians have left their homes. A few weeks ago, I traveled to Poland with our board chair, David Heller, and Becky Heller. We saw the firsthand plight of these refugees and the heroic, and I'm understating it even to call it heroic, the heroic work of our global partners, the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, you all know it as the Joint or JDC, and the Jewish Agency for Israel, JAFI, as we call JAFI. Thanks to many of you on this call, we have been able to respond as Jewish Cleveland, and to date, we have received almost 1,200 individual gifts and have raised more than $3.3 million for Ukraine relief, which includes a $1 million generous matching grant from the Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mandel Foundation. This is supporting immediate needs in Ukraine as well as needs in the bordering countries. Now, it's important for me to note that we are only able to be here today because we were here yesterday. And so thank you for your generosity in our annual campaign, because that has enabled the infrastructure and the services in this region to exist, which allowed our partners to respond immediately to the crisis and to the war. We know that the needs will continue to increase as this war rages on. Frankly, from the people that I met with on the border and the people that a recent mission that some of you were on that we met with, it's clear the needs are going to increase long after. They're going to continue long after as well. We are going to continue to raise funds for those in need. So please continue to support our Ukraine relief efforts. And if you have not yet made a gift, or if you would like to make an additional gift, consider making one by visiting jewishcleveland.org. Now today, it is my honor and privilege to welcome 4 incredible professionals, partners of ours. I'm going to give you 2 sentences on each of them, and then I'm going to be quiet so that we can hear from them. Amos Lavron serves as the director of JDC's FSU Division for External Relations. Amos began his tenure at JDC in 2003 as director of FSU Missions and Special Projects. I'll tell you that I happened to be with Amos, I think it was the day after, 2 days after Russia invaded Ukraine. I'm going to quickly say everyone's name, and then we'll start with Amos after that. Roman Polanski is Jewish Agency, JAFI's regional director of the former Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and Germany. Roman joined the Jewish Agency after a long and storied career in Russian media and Israeli politics. We are thrilled to have you on today. We've now all been on many calls together since the start of the war, and 2 others to introduce quickly. Valentina Kumenko, a number of us just met with her in Ashdod. She's JAFI's manager of absorption programs for young adults. We met with her with a group of New Olim, and she'll tell you about the incredible work with refugees she's been doing in just a few minutes. And Oksana Galkovich, who is the deputy director of field operations for the JDC in FSU. Oksana was born and raised in Kharkiv, Ukraine, and later she will tell about the incredible humanitarian efforts that she's responsible for, and I'm hoping share some of her own personal story as well. So you have all been working tirelessly around the clock. We so appreciate you joining Cleveland right now to give us this really important information. Amos, we're going to start with you. What is the situation on the ground right now? And how is the JDC helping those refugees as well as those still in Ukraine?
Thank you, Erica, and thank you all for the opportunity to share with you the work that JDC is doing on your behalf. And everything I'm about to share with you about our work is only possible thanks to your partnership. And as Erica said, the reason we're able to react today is because we had the infrastructure in place yesterday. Before the war, JDC was assisting 37,000 elderly clients, 9,900 of them Holocaust survivors, and 2,500 children at risk. And we were doing this through 18 Chesed humanitarian assistance centers. Chesed in Hebrew is an act of loving kindness, and these humanitarian assistance centers provide exactly that to the vulnerable in their communities, providing food, medicine, home care, winter relief, and socialization programs. And this is the infrastructure that we now have in place to react in real time. 4 JDC field offices with tens of JDC staff, hundreds of Chesed staff at the 18 Cheseds, and thousands of home care workers who are providing critical support for the bedridden, for the homebound, for the most frail elderly clients. And in addition to that, we also had about 25 to 30,000 Jews engaged in our community development programs, our JCCs, volunteer programs, our teen network. And that's important to note because now, during the emergency, the volunteers are playing a critical role. And so before the war, we were reaching about a third of the 200,000 Jews of Ukraine. And this infrastructure is what is serving us today when we are responding to the critical needs. And the war started, we very, very quickly shifted into emergency mode. JDC was active in the 2014 war in Ukraine, in the COVID crisis over the past 2 years, where some of the emergency protocols were actually relevant for the current situation, and obviously in the crises that go back to the 2018 war between Russia and Georgia and before. So we have a lot of emergency experience, and we very quickly shifted to emergency mode. One day after the war started, we realized that hotlines that we established for the local cheseds, where clients can call in and the cheseds can call out to the clients, they needed more support because staff went for shelter. And on a Friday night, we sent a call to action to JDC Russian-speaking staff in Israel, saying we want to establish a hotline immediately. And on Shabbat morning at 10 a.m., an SMS was sent out to the tens of thousands of clients across Ukraine saying, if you cannot reach your local Chesed hotline, call this number. And that number is a Ukrainian number, but it reaches a call center in Israel, where we have 20 lines answering calls simultaneously. And since then, we've also established outgoing calls where we proactively call the neediest clients from our volunteer center in Moldova and from Israel, where we have hundreds of volunteers. Up until now, we've had more than 15,200 incoming calls and over 21,500 outgoing calls. And some of these calls, I won't exaggerate if I say that they're life-saving. Just to give you an example, we had a call from a woman in Kharkov while it was being bombed, who was with her baby and had no food for that baby. She called the hotline that I just mentioned. That call reached Israel. It was logged into the system. Everything is done with advanced systems. We have a situation room based in Jerusalem. Every 2 hours, the information is sent to the Chesed. The information was sent to the Chesed, and a volunteer knocked on her door within 2 hours with food for the baby. This is just one example of many. We have many Holocaust survivors that we're helping. People who are saying that this experience brings them back to the horrors of World War II, where the horror hurt their entire body and where they are forced to fight for their lives. And many of them receive our home care support through the Chesed. And it's quite miraculous that home care, for the most part, is continuing. In some places, it's continuing in full. And in some places, it's continuing to the neediest clients, according to our emergency protocols, where we prioritize the bedridden and the homebound. And if Erika spoke about heroes, these home care workers are amazing heroes. Some of them are sleeping at clients' homes. Some of them took clients into their own homes. Some of them are walking for hours in places where there's no longer public transportation in order to reach their clients, showing a level of commitment and dedication that is just awe-inspiring, and they really are real heroes. So home care is continuing. We are also continuing to provide the critical food and medicine that people need. In some places, we're able to use the bank cards and food cards that we use on a regular basis. And even in some places, they're able to use them at supermarkets. In other places, there are shortages. And we realize that we have to bring in additional food and medicine. That is a major challenge that we have now. And my colleague Oksana is actually heading the team in charge of bringing in humanitarian assistance. And thus far, we've brought in over 217 tons of humanitarian assistance, planes coming from Israel in partnership with IFCJ, with Latet, bringing in goods to Moldova that are then shipped in, trucked in to Odessa, and then dispersed among the Cheseds in the Odessa region and in eastern Ukraine. We have two hubs in Lviv and in Chernivtsi where trucks with goods from Europe are coming in and bringing in tons of food and critical medicine that is then dispersed among the Cheseds, medicine that is absolutely life-saving. Up until now, I talked about our assistance within Ukraine. I'll talk a bit about what we're doing to help people evacuate and to help refugees who cross the borders. So up until now, we have evacuated over 11,900 Jews from the harshest areas, including Chernigov, Sumy, Kharkov, Mykolaiv, all those places that we now are also familiar with, saving lives. We actually also started medical evacuations in partnership with the Claims Conference, with ambulances. We evacuated over 60 Holocaust survivors from the most harshest areas like Kramatorsk and Sumy and Mykolaiv, and now they are in Germany where they will be taken care of for the rest of their lives. And we are assisting the tens of thousands of refugees that are crossing the borders. Up until now, we've assisted over 32,700 refugees with vital care, with food, with medicine, with psychosocial aid. We're helping them with accommodations. We're waiting for the refugees on the borders of Moldova, Romania, Poland, Hungary, meeting people who have been on the road for 3 days, for 4 days, for 5 days, people who have all of their belongings in one plastic bag, who left behind their husbands, their fathers. This again is the phenomena of this war, where all of the refugees are women, children, and some elderly, and people who left behind their spouses, their dreams, their careers, and we meet them at the borders with food, with medicine, and with a warm hug. We're working very, very closely with all of our partners, including with the Jewish Agency that you'll hear from in a minute, and we're preparing for Passover. We have over 5,000 copies of the newly published Haggadah, one that we first published after the collapse of the Soviet Union. We now have a new edition that we are distributing among the refugees. We have 18 tons of matzah that we're distributing inside Ukraine and for the refugees in the neighboring countries. We have online seders planned. We have in-person seders planned in the neighboring countries. And we are all driven by the understanding that Kol Yisrael Aravim Ze Lezeh, all Jews are responsible for one another. That's our strength, as well as the understanding of our collective responsibility. And I'll finish by saying again, thank you very, very much, because all of this work is only possible thanks to your partnership.
Thank you, Amos. Roman, the last time I saw you in person, I believe we were in a room with a young woman who had been on the border with her 4-year-old and 6-year-old, and the 6-year-old boy had collapsed, and a driver appeared from nowhere and got them into their car and got them across the border. And she learns then that that driver was connected to the Jewish Agency. Can you add more to what Amos shared about what's happening on the ground?
Of course. But let me start by saying that this war, for me personally, has a very sad and very personal angle, because I was born in Ukraine. I was born in a small city near Odessa. I grew up there. And what I'm seeing right now on TV, what I'm seeing in the internet, what I'm reading, it's very close to my heart. You know, I grew up in this environment where there was no distinction between Russians, Ukrainians, Moldavians. And if somebody in those days had asked me what was more probable, the war between Russia and Ukraine or Martian invasion on Earth, I wouldn't have hesitated for a moment, of course, Martian invasion. And now we are seeing this unthinkable, what is going on in the middle of Europe, and my heart is bleeding. I call my friends, my co-workers, our employees, and they fear don't get answer. We have 90 local workers in Ukraine, and when I call, I don't know where they are. They are in the basement or in this overcrowded trains going to the border, or they're staying on the border and trying to cross it. Thanks God, maybe they're in our hotels or they're already in Israel. Our main effort, the Jewish Agency main effort right now is in two directions. One is to secure the security, to enhance the security of Jewish organizations in Ukraine, because in this chaos, when there are so many weapons on the street, there is a real fear of looting, there is a real fear of shortage, you know, shortage of medicine. And that's why through our security fund, we started distributing $1.5 million to enhance the security of each and every Jewish community in Ukraine. And here I would like to thank you and to thank all our partners who contributed to this effort. Another effort, which is very, very important, is to get people to the border from these besieged cities, from these bombed cities, and then to get them from the other side of the border to Israel. It's not an easy task because, you know, to convince driver to go with the bus to this bombed city is quite not an easy thing. And the buses, it's scarce, and fuel in shortage. So we are trying to get them by being in touch with local leaders, with community leaders, with rabbis. We call them and we ask them where you are and how we can help you. We organized together with Keren ISO, together with JDC and with local organizations, we organized during this time about 400 buses to the border, getting to the border more than 12,000 people. And this is really a rescue operation. Now, together with JDC, we are working on medical evacuation. We are speaking about Holocaust survivors. Some of them, as Amos mentioned, they go to Germany, and some of them, and we help them to go to Israel, of course. We also opened a hotline, and we received more than 30,000 calls in this hotline. Most of them, of course, people want to go to Israel. It's not an easy decision in this situation because, as Amos mentioned it actually, we are speaking about torn families. They have to leave their husbands, their brothers, sometimes their fathers. They leave them in Ukraine and they go, these women, these children, these elderly people, they go to the border. Then we meet them on the border and we get them to our hotels that we rented in advance. And here also I can say that only thanks to you and thanks to the efforts and the support of American Jewry, we could do it yesterday and we can do it, of course, today. We rented in advance hotels in 4 countries, in Poland, in Romania, in Moldova, and in Hungary. And we deployed there more than 100 our employees and volunteers who came from different parts of the world. We have volunteers from Canada and from the States, and of course from Israel, from different countries. And this is absolutely amazing to see this unity, to see this energy, to see this motivation of these people who come and contribute from their heart. It's so important that they are there. I saw Valentina just touched these people and be there to listen to them, to be with them. And it's so important for them in this time, of course. Now, many of these people, they are sick because many of them, they're injured, and many of them, they are just elderly people with all kinds of diseases. And we brought with Beilinson Hospital doctors to two countries, to Poland and Romania. And there we provided them with this medical help. And it was very, very important that we could do it on the spot, and we could give them this treatment. Now, how to get them to Israel? In order to go to Israel, people have to have visas. And in this case, we entered the situation when there are so many refugees, so many refugees, but not enough consuls to get them this visa. And for many people, it was difficult to come and to get all their documents because they're just fled. For children, for example, they didn't have their international passports. So many problems that we had to solve on the spot. And we established a new system, which is called Aliyah Express. And in this system, it was enough that people could point that they have relatives in Israel, in some city, or they participated in our activities. It was enough to get them green light and to go to Israel. And then in Israel, they, during the next month, they are supposed to accomplish their process of eligibility of Aliyah. During this month, a Jewish agency, together with the government, we provide them with health insurance, with hotels, and of course, with some help for their everyday needs. So this is huge, huge operation that we are doing in these 4 countries. And I can only say that we are doing it on your behalf, and thanks to your support, thanks to your commitment and your partnership. And we are now, I think, in the kind of, end of the first big wave of refugees. But news that I hear and read in the internet, they are not encouraging. We also receive some information from other agencies, and there is a danger, real danger of the continuation of this war in the east and in the south. And in this sense, it's very important that we have this. And Ilonit, if I can ask you to show this chart where you can see the routes of people, how they go to the border. You see here, this is Kharkiv on the eastern part. Kharkiv, Dnipro, Zaporozhye, Kherson on the south. And on the western part, we see Warsaw and Budapest, Bucharest, Yashi, and Chisinau. And actually, we have these 2 major routes. One is going on north through Lviv and Tskevets. This is a place in Western Ukraine where we rented 1,000 beds, and people who come to the border before crossing the border, they have this opportunity to spend the night in this place and just to have some refreshment. And in the east, in the south, you can see the region of Kherson, Odessa. It goes to Moldova and to Romania, to Yashi. So what we are seeing right now, that maybe, God forbid, but this is the situation, that maybe we are on the verge of the next big wave of refugees because of this operation in the east and in the south. And again, I know that we were there yesterday together, we are today together, and we will be there together, whatever we have to cope with. We are together, and this is a very strong feeling of all of us that we together, we can overcome this. And I'm sure that we will see again Ukrainian Jewry thriving and flourishing with our help, with your help, and with the help of the whole worldwide Jewry. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roman. One of the things that so comes across hearing you and Amos is the strength and determination to care for people and to save people. And I saw that same strength and resilience and determination both in Valentina, but also the New Orleans that we met with. Valentina, can you share what you have been doing and some of the experiences that you've had with the refugees?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and thank you for this opportunity to share my personal and professional experience that I've been going through for the last month. It's so strange to say that we've been through it for the last more than 40 days. And for me, as a Russian-speaking Jewish agencies professional, was really clear that it's a question of a couple of days or maybe hours when I will find myself in the Eastern Europe. Even though I personally was born in Russia 32 years ago. And as Roman was mentioning before, that's such a crazy reality that we kind of found ourselves, because my grandmother used to live in Crimea 10 years ago. And for me, visiting her was such an obvious thing, and I would never think about crossing the border. Both of our previous speakers mentioned the meaning of the commitment, the constant commitment that the American Jewry have been made to both of our organizations. And I have to tell you that amount of people who were mentioning the connection with the Jewish communities back in Ukraine, and that was the only reason that they knew who they supposed to reach out to when they felt in urgent. Amount of Masa participants or alumni, parents of the kids who participate in our summer camps or some sort of other activities, birthright and so on, was an incredible thing. Erika, we asked one of the families when we met them in Ashdod, how did you find your way to the Jewish agency? And for them, it was really obvious to say, of course, our kids were involved in the summer camps, so we did know who to call. And I have to tell you that one of the stories, and there are so many of those, but one of the mothers back in Romania came up to me asking if I've visited Dnipro 2 years ago, participating in one of the Aliyah seminars. And I told her, yeah, I remember that. And she told me that I was talking with them about the program, Aliyah program, or absorption program, more correctly saying, SELA, students before their parents, which I'm personally alumni. And I came to talk with the young people on the opportunity to come on this program. And she told me after this seminar, our son decided to come on this program. And now we're about to join him in Israel, obviously. And this is just a piece showcasing our work that we've been able to do on the ground with all of your support for more than 30 years in former Soviet Union. I have to tell you that, as I mentioned before, for me, it was really obvious to find myself in Eastern Europe on the 5th day of the war, getting just a call from HR saying, okay, so tomorrow is your flight, just gather your stuff and make your way there. And I found myself with another additional 2 professionals, Rostik and Andrei. And we started from working with 150 Olim, people who expressed their need and wanted to come to Israel to make Aliyah in one hotel. In 5 days, we grew up, we increased the number in almost 1,000 people in 5 facilities. And when Roman came to visit me and giving me a hug, we were able to send the second flight with around 150 new Olim, with all of their pets and their kids and all of the stuff that we were able to take from Ukraine. As someone who's currently working for the Jewish Agency, and my major goal is basically to focus on the absorption part of the story. We talk a lot about Aliyah process. We talk a lot about trying and helping people to make their way here. But I think it's the major goal for us as an Israeli society and for the Jewish Agency and our partners here is to make sure that all of these people will receive the support that they needed, and the absorption process will be good for them and they will find their way here. And someone who is overseeing the Aliyah absorption program for young people, who we see not just our future, but our current present time, we want to make sure that they will have appropriate Hebrew studies and workshop, and they will see themselves building their new life here in Israel. And that's what we're doing right now. And Erika and myself and other members of the community were able to kind of see the closing, the circle closing, when we met a couple of families that I was able to help them to make Aliyah a couple of weeks ago. And I have to share with you another story, because I'm coming from an educational background. And sometimes we as educators, we split the seeds, but we never know when we'll see the result of our work. But here in this story, sometimes we do have an opportunity to hear the stories and how our work and acts were meaningful for the people. And I've met Sasha from Dnipro in Romania one night when just a random woman brought him in the middle of the night to one of our hotels and said, okay, this is Sasha, he's from Dnipro, he's 17 years old and he wants to go to Israel. And of course we received him, provided him a hot meal, shower, and started working and trying to understand what we can potentially do for Sasha. And it was really challenging because when Sasha went to consulate check, and his father lives in Israel, when they called together to the father, he told, I'm not ready to receive you, Sasha. You will have to find the other framework or someone who will take care of you. And he called me crying, saying that there is no way for him to go back to Ukraine because he's almost 18 and he will have to draft the army. And he left behind his mother and twin sister back in Dnipro. And for me, it was really obvious that we'll have to provide Sasha with some sort of framework. And we offered him to join one of our urgent programs that were opened here in Israel, one in the north and one in the south, in Carmel, where I found my first home in Israel 15 years ago. Long story shortly, I've met Sasha last week in the headquarters of the Jewish Agency in Jerusalem, smiling and dancing with the rest of the group that we've able to receive in the last couple of days. And I told him that there is no better way for me to see how the responsibility, the Jewish responsibility, come through. And I can't wait to see Sasha and all of others that we've been able to bring here to find their way here in Israel and building their new life and opening one new page of their life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Valentina. Oksana, would you please share with us your story and share with us the incredible humanitarian work that you are doing?
Thank you, and I would like to start first of all with thanking each and every one of you of supporting this work, which is I think is a sacred work like right now, and this is indeed a life-saving work. When these words have become literal, for better or for worse. And I am speaking today, and as you can see, I'm sitting in Jerusalem physically, but my heart, my soul, and my head and my thoughts are in Kharkiv, which is my native city, and which you can see in the picture right behind me. This is how my Kharkiv looked 47 days ago, before the war started. And usually, you know, when I'm starting my briefings, I welcome people by saying like good afternoon, or good morning, good evening, whatever time of the day it is. Recently, I have been finding it very hard to greet people like this. First of all, because we don't have mornings or evenings or afternoons anymore. It's just one long day. And second of all, because none of it is good for this past days. Honestly, I don't know. I am looking forward to going back to Kharkiv, and I was there just a month before the war started, visiting my parents and my brother, and I made Aliyah to Israel 8 years ago, living basically my whole family and my friends and everyone stayed in Kharkiv, and it's only me, my husband, and my kids who live in Israel. Everybody else made the decision to stay in Ukraine. for various reasons. And I think that one of the reasons is that the Jewish life in Ukraine has recently become a very vibrant and a very rich and a very flourishing Jewish life. And you could easily be a Ukrainian and a Jew at the same time. And I think that to you, American Jews, this concept of being a Ukrainian Jew is very close, because people really love their country, love the country where they live. But on the other hand, they also are free to express their Jewishness and to live as the Jews. So, just 1 month after I left, after my visit, after I left my home city, just 1 month after that, on February 24, I woke up to a phone call from my brother at 5:30 a.m. who told me that Kharkov was being bombed. And he was sitting there under those bombings. And since then, for 3 consecutive weeks, my lifespan was of 2 hours, meaning that every 2 hours, I would send him a message asking him if he's still alive. And if he did not answer immediately, my life would end to the next half hour, next hour, until I got a confirmation from him that he's alive, and they were just hiding in the bathroom or somewhere in the underground parking where there is no connection. And the first 4 or 5 weeks, basically, it happened not only with my brother, but it happened with all my friends and with all the people that I grew up with, and et cetera, and et cetera. This is a nightmare which has started and unfortunately doesn't end. You've all heard the news about Kharkov being bombed. I don't need to tell you that. I don't need to show you the pictures. The media is full of those pictures. I am sure all of you have also seen the premises of Kharkov Hillel, which has been bombed just a few weeks ago. And for me, this is not just, a Hillel being bombed. This is a Hillel where I actually started my Jewish life. This is my entry point into the Jewish life. This is where I was born as a Jew. This is from, and for over 20 years, over 25 years actually, I was there and it was my home. And then seeing this home being bombed is just as painful as seeing your regular home being bombed. And thank God, we were able to get, for example, my parents out of Kharkiv and into Israel. And thank God they're safely now living with me in Jerusalem. But just recently, for example, my mom was crying her heart out because she got a message from one of her neighbors that, the windows in our apartment were completely broken by the shockwave because there was a missile hitting there. And I can tell you, more and more of such stories. This is very hard and heartbreaking, but I must say that the only thing that is keeping me sane in these days and that keeps me going is actually the possibility to work with an organization like the JDC, because this organization gives me an opportunity to be able to respond, to be able to be together with my people. And by my people, I mean both the Jewish people of Ukraine and the people of Kharkiv, and to be able to influence the situation. And the influence that we have been able to do is indeed, with your support, is indeed huge. And Amos was saying, I was speaking about, us continuing to provide services to the home care clients, and especially imagine how it is to provide a home care service in a city where there is no public transportation working. The taxis are also afraid to run because of a fear of being shelled. The supermarkets are destroyed, the pharmacies are destroyed, and then you have bedridden people or homebound people who cannot not only move out of the city, but who cannot move out of their beds to go down into the basement. They're basically lying in their beds, listening to those explosions around them, and they cannot do a thing about it. They are all by themselves. And this is where the caregiver sent by the JDC is indeed someone who can be next to you, who can hold your hand, who can be afraid together with you, or who can, at least help you if you can walk a little bit, at least walk you out a little bit, at least in the staircase. And there were cases when our caregivers lived in the homes with their clients because they couldn't leave those homes, where they were taking clients to their homes, and etc. and etc. And I could continue. Another thing that we started doing immediately after the beginning of the war is the humanitarian assistance. And this is also something that Amos mentioned and you, Erika, mentioned. Again, we did it because, first of all, the bank cards that we usually are providing help with these bank cards are not working in many places anymore. In some places they do, but in many places they don't. Even when they do, you cannot always buy food, or you cannot always buy medications, and especially medications. Medications are not available. Such medications as insulin and as thyroid medications are, there is a hunt in the broad daylight for those medications. So basically, we've started sending humanitarian aid from Israel. We're buying medications here in bulk. We have sent over 9, I think, but with tomorrow's plane, it will be 9 tons of medications only. We have sent over 217 tons of food and other supplies. And most recently, again, we are all, these are all details. These are all little tiny things to these stories. But just recently, when I was, everybody knows that I am responsible for getting this aid. Everybody knows if they need something, they need to tell me what they need, and I'll get it. And then the most recent request that I got, what is the most recent request that I got? It was for Pastinor. And women know that this is a medication that is used for a medical abortion. And we're getting this after the girls and young women came out of Irpin and Bucha and of other cities liberated after the invasion of the Russian army. And this is the case when our psychologists working in the HESES in Ukraine and our psychologists and psychotherapists working on the hotlines are starting to receive requests from raped girls and women. And we are starting to receive requests for Pastinor. This little thing tells a whole story of what's going on in my country and how much longer after this war finishes, we will still need to be there to continue helping people heal. It's not going to pass in a day or two. It's not going to pass in a year or two. And I'm not now speaking about economical state that Ukraine has been thrown away back 15 years, that there were wonderful cities ruined. This is all material. It will come back. But people's souls and people's lives, and I can, so the humanitarian aid, I don't like, these are the things that work. And then again, food and medications and power banks, for example, for the cell phones. Or recently, we also got a request for special tapes to put on the windows, so that the windows wouldn't be broken with shockwaves. We recently got a request from Kharkov synagogue, for example, for sleeping bags. People are sleeping in the synagogue because there are certain areas in the city that are being bombed, and people are very much afraid to sleep in their homes. So they're sleeping either in the Jewish center sometimes or in the synagogue, wherever is more convenient to them. In terms of course, we're doing evacuation, a lot of evacuation. We have evacuated over 12,000 people with the buses of the JDC. And we're doing different kinds of evacuations, the buses and the ambulances. And like Amos mentioned, we've evacuated over 60 people with ambulances to Germany already. And in evacuation, there are also stories everywhere. Like, I'm giving you this thousands, right? But after each of those numbers, there is someone's life and someone's story. And can you imagine like a story when we're doing this evacuation from Odessa, for example, and getting a phone call here in Israel from an Israeli number. Someone is calling me and there is a woman hysterical. She's crying. What can I do for you? And she says, my son, he's now in Odessa. He went before the war to visit his grandparents in Odessa. Usual thing, My son also has his grandparents in Ukraine. And then this bombing started, and it was just, maybe a few days after the war began. And she says his card is not working. His bank card is not working. He does not have any money. He is somewhere at the railway station trying to get out of the city, and I've lost connection with him. And he's 15 years old. She's hysterical. She doesn't know what's going on. So luckily, that Chesed Odessa is doing evacuation exactly from the Odessa railway station. That's where we usually gather people. That's where we're putting them on the buses and sending them to Odessa. I'm telling her, can you please send me the picture of your son, the photo? She sends me the photo of her son. I'm sending it to all the staff and all the volunteers that work there from Odessa Chesed. Within 15 minutes, Chesed director of Odessa sends me back a picture of this boy in Odessa. He found him. He found him. He put him on a bus that was going to Moldova. And then from Moldova, he was already ready to leave with the plane to Tel Aviv. Can you imagine, being a mother? It's easy to imagine what this woman has lived through and what basically our presence in Ukraine enables us to do.
So Oksana, I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to get to a few questions before people hop on. And one of those questions is actually, you're the right person to answer, or to at least begin the answer, which is that we have over 100 people watching on the screen right now, multiples on some of them. They want to help. What can they do to help? They want to know if they can get on a plane and volunteer. They want to know if they can send things. If you and your colleagues on with us right now can tell what would be most helpful, we would appreciate that.
There are a few things that you can do. Thing number one, donate to your federation's campaign in support of the organizations like JDC and JAFI and other partners, because we are working on the ground and we are doing a lot of work on your behalf. And basically, whatever we're making happen, you are making it possible. And then we're making it happen. So first of all, donate to your federation. Money is something that with which we can buy what we want and what we need, both in the border countries and sometimes even in Ukraine still. I know that there are some people who are willing to donate gifts in kind, certain stuff, and send them to Ukraine or to the border countries. And I thank you for that wish. The thing here is that we have to be very professional in this way. Let's put it like this. I understand the emotion to help, but we also have to think when it is something that, when you want to send, let's say, jackets that cost $50 a piece, but the plane to airlift those jackets from US to Europe will cost us $200,000. I doubt it, that it's a wise using of your money. I think your money, if you just transfer this money, we could buy more jackets, and not only jackets in Europe, for example. There are some cases, of course, when the people want to donate medications, very expensive medications, and they also find the ways to airlift them into Europe. And then this is a fantastic thing to do, because basically we're getting in Europe a huge amount of very expensive, very necessary medications. And then, to handle the ground transportation, this is already very easy and relatively cheap compared to the airlift. And of course, I think you can continue supporting Ukraine like you've done for this past few weeks. You can continue, sending the messages of your support as well to your communities.
So I want to thank Amos and Roman and Valentina and Oksana for everything that you and your teams are doing. If you can please send a message back to everyone and tell them that Jewish Cleveland is with you. We are going to continue to be, we want to continue to be a strong partner supporting all of your work. We are honored and privileged to be your partners. You know, we're heading into Passover, and we say that in every generation, we're all supposed to be as if we personally came from Egypt. I think we will read those words in a very different way this year than we have in years past. And so thank you for being such an important part of this story. And Chag Sameach to all of you. Thank you to all those that are participating. Wishing all of you and your families a safe and meaningful Pesach holiday. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Chag Sameach.
Thank you. Chag Sameach.